Pod. Welcome back to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's Danny O'Neil. I'm Christian Caple. This will be my last episode without a little bit higher quality webcam for those watching on YouTube. I got it.
You're going to go up. Oh, you've got it.
I was excited for this to be the debut. And then I realized I needed USB-A to USB-C adapter because I already have to use one for my microphone and I only have one. Mm-hmm. So I bought one of those hubs that just plugs into the USB-C on the MacBook and it's got a bunch of different plugins. So, you live and you learn. Thanks to everybody listening anywhere. Thanks especially to folks watching my grainy half of this video on YouTube.
Is my camera better?
Yeah, you come through nice and clear. Now we'll see. Maybe you'll look like the grainy one once I get going here in the 4K. But you've got a sports coat on again, so
I do. It's a different one. I think I've got another 2 weeks before I have to start doubling back on my sports coats.
We should play a game. Can you name all 49 teams that received a vote in the AP Top 25 poll that weren't Washington?
No. Did Vandy?
That's a good question. I'm so prepared that I'm going to Google it right this second and look it up. No Vanderbilt. No Vanderbilt.
Not even with the pisser coming back?
Not even with no. I was hoping that the answer would be yes so that you could play the drop. If they were ranked, then it wouldn't apply. If they were ranked, that guy'd have to call into Feinbaum and be a little bit nicer to Vanderbilt.
Alabama don't lose to Vandy. We don't lose to Vandy. That is friggin' pathetic, Coach DeBoer.
I've been watching the Netflix. I've seen an episode of the Netflix Any Given Saturday show, which is there's a rash of these sort of inside the process. I don't know if it still traces back to Hard Knocks, but all the streaming platforms now have a variety of documentary style shows, and Netflix has one about the SEC, and Vandy features prominently and is in some ways the most interesting school because they've got the most to gain, right? Like, and they are clearly Diego Pavilla's cursing, the coach is dropping F-bombs when he's talking about Tennessee. They are trying to brand themselves as the upstart, the up and comer in that conference, as it were.
Renegade Vandy. Renegade rough around the edges Vandy.
Which is really funny if you know anything about that school's history and how it is positioned vis-a-vis some of the other institutions in that conference.
I will say, do you remember I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but like Fox News was doing a documentary about Alabama specifically.
Oh, really?
Do you remember this?
No.
This was like within the last year. They followed him around for like DeBoer's first season, I think. During camp and then during the season. And there was a free trial that I signed up for because I wanted to watch the first one. And I watched the first one. I was just like, yeah, no, I don't need to watch any more of this.
Was it boring?
Yeah, just boring. And I don't know. It seemed like they were going to focus more on like Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams going forward. Like they kind of identified them correctly as the stars. And so they were going to tell their story. I watched it because I wanted to see like how much DeBoer there was. And that was the documentary that yielded the clip of Caitlin DeBoer's wife saying she was buying a different colored tie at Nordstrom. And that was how the checkout guy like knew that they were leaving for Alabama or something, that people were like, is that true?
We will get back to the votes. I will just make one observation. Among this rash of sports documentaries is one on, I think it's on Amazon Prime, about Tom Brady going to Birmingham. Owns, I think, 3% of a soccer club there. And he looks like a total douchebag in the whole thing. Is whoever made the decision where they're like, we're going to have Tom Brady. I'm sure they looked at Ryan Reynolds and Wrexham and like, this is a great vehicle for Brady. And he comes off as there's part of me that likes the fact that he is portraying himself as I'm here to teach you how to win, and I'm really important because I do like the idea of sticking it to a bunch of English soccer enthusiasts who do not want it, Americans, like would resent that coming from an American. But there's another part where like, dude, this doesn't make anybody look good. Like you have no clue what you're doing, and you don't seem particularly interested in learning about the customs. That whatever sort of Ted Lasso, Ryan Reynolds vehicle you thought this was going to be for you, you people are going to end up hating you where you own this team because of this.
So if you're doing the whole desert island exercise and you only get 3 documentaries to bring with you, and one of them has to be Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, which one are you picking?
At this point, Rodgers, because I think Rodgers is more interesting. And I think I thought Tom Brady balanced fame about as well as any incredible, successful athlete could through the first 10 years of his career. I mean, even when he had the 5 layers of protection ad, I thought that was a great. He's the only one wearing a helmet, not wearing a helmet, yet he's not really the star of that ad. Like, it was this great ability to sort of an inclusive leader, and somewhere along the line, and I'm not sure where, he completely lost the plot. And I think he believes his own mythology. And whereas Rodgers resents the way he's characterized, but that actually is somewhat interesting. If you forced me to learn or read more about either of them, it's Rodgers all day long.
So how offended are you that your Washington Huskies are apparently not among the top 49 teams in the country preseason per the AP poll?
It would concern me more, or I would be more upset about it if it was the coaches poll. And this is, people used to give me a hard time about being a journalist who doesn't like other journalists. And there's a kernel of truth in that. But especially nowadays, I'm not sure how fired up I should be about a poll of media members. And I'm speaking honestly. And when one of my first questions was like, who exactly is voting on this these days? Because there has been such a change in the media landscape that I think that's part of it. I would be more bothered if it was a coaches poll.
And in the coaches poll, they effectively ranked 41st. They got 15 points. So however that sorted out, I'm guessing that's a lot of like 22, 23, 24, 25 rankings in the coaches poll, which Jed Fish votes in. So you'll never see, in the coaches poll, you only see their final ballot of the year. I'd love to see Jed Fish's initial ballot, see if he had Washington on there.
I hope he voted Washington 1.
He's not broken out a shirt like last year with the Where's Washington on it and the top 25 and UW not appearing. Perhaps he's embracing the underdog role this year. But the coaches are not like the coaches were super high on him. 41st is still a ways down the list, but they did at least receive votes. I thought because of that, that's about where they'd end up in the AP poll. I'm a little surprised they didn't get a single vote. Like, if you told me they're not going to be in the receiving votes category, I wouldn't necessarily think that was crazy. If you told me 49 different teams were receiving votes, then I'd have thought, I'd probably would have guessed it'd be more likely than not that Washington would be one of them. It also makes total sense. I mean, this is a team that's being picked 10th, 11th or so in preseason Big Ten polls. That 41st ranking in the coaches poll was behind 9 other Big Ten teams. So the coaches poll basically thinks of Washington what all the preseason Big Ten polls think. They weren't good last year. Like they were not a good team last year. And last year is the biggest determining factor when it comes to putting together preseason polls. I used to think, I used to agree with Chris Peterson on this, that they should just do away with formal preseason polls because they too heavily influence the polls going forward once the season starts, and not enough voters. And this is where I give a lot of credit to John Wilner of the San Jose Mercury News. He gets roasted for his polls. He gets roasted for his rankings because they quite often deviate quite a bit from the norm. And the reason they deviate quite a bit from the norm is that he is more willing than probably any other voter to completely rearrange his top 25 after a first week of data, right? Preseason is based on what a team did last year combined with how many players they're bringing back from that team, what they did in the transfer portal, what their quarterback situation looks like, what their schedule looks like, returning starters, all that. You need to be willing to throw that all out after 1 week of games. Like, in theory, the team that has the most impressive win week 1 should be ranked number 1 after the first week. But even then, well, what's impressive? Well, the team that beat the highest ranked team in the preseason, okay, so now you're saying that this is an impressive win because they beat a team that was ranked high based off no games. So the preseason poll's still affecting that in a way. So, like, I get coaches who say, just get rid of this thing. I used to think that. Now I just think, well, the selection committee is going to do what it does at the end of the year. There's 12 teams that are going to be involved in this postseason. You're not talking about bias contributing to how you pare it down to 4 anymore. And I think it's fun. Like, polls are just fun. People like them. People like to argue about them. Been doing it forever. You know, there's all kinds of historical data around AP polls, and I think it's interesting to track teams that most frequently appear in the preseason poll but don't finish the season ranked and vice versa and all those things. So I'm not anti-poll. I wish that more voters, coaches included in the coaches poll, were willing to like drastically rearrange their polls as the actual data comes in.
And they're not. And the reason they're not is because of the same sort of, I would call it a trait, an enduring trait of college football, of certain teams start at a higher default than other certain teams. And that's just the way it always is. And I'm not sure how much is going to change that, because you're absolutely right. It shouldn't. You should be willing to, oh my gosh, we need to totally reconfigure this based on what we've actually seen, especially in an era with more transfers. There is less carryover now from one season to the next in college football than there was 20 years ago. That should be an absolutely indisputable fact, just because of the transfers and because of the increased fluidity of rosters. Do the polls reflect that? No, man, it's largely the same teams that are in the spot. There's no, so just there, you know, it's part of the way the game is. It's part of how we understand it. I don't dislike polls. I also think that polls are listicles, man. Like, and journalists generally tend to look at listicles of like, it is something that is fairly quick that gets people talking. Rank the 10 most important plays in Seahawks history. They're inevitably arbitrary. There's no way for them not to be arbitrary. They're not nearly as objective as it appears as they're presented, and people talk about them. That's exactly what a poll is. That is 100% what a poll is.
So Washington last year, and we know about how tough their schedule was, what it looked like on the road. I believe the opponents they played away from Husky Stadium were 52-17 last year combined. Last season, they played 1, 2, 3 of the top 9 teams in the preseason top 25 poll. And obviously Indiana was not one of those. Wound up being a top 10 type of team. So that was last year. That's the schedule we all say and all agree was very difficult. This year, they have 4 of the top 14 in the AP poll on their schedule. Number 3, Ohio State, the defending national champion, by the way. Number 7, Oregon, one of 2 teams to defeat that national champion last year. Number 12, Illinois, and number 14, Michigan, the other team to defeat that national champion last year. So you don't have Penn State like you did last season, which is ranked number 2 in the AP top 25, its highest preseason ranking in a long time. You have 4 of the top 14 teams in the country, preseason anyway, on Washington's schedule, and 3 of them come to Seattle. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe it's not viewed as daunting because one of them's Illinois and the helmet doesn't get you, you know? But there's a lot of expectations around the Illini. They're very experienced. Illinois is an example of a team that I think has, even though it sound like kind of a hypocrite saying this, even though I'm not like crazy high on Illinois, I kind of think they're going to come down to earth a little bit. They returned 16 starters and their starting quarterback, and they won 10 games last year, and they got a pretty easy schedule. That's your non-classic, non-blue blood team that I think people have appropriately ranked. Like, look, whether they live up to be the number 12 team in the country or not, I got my questions. I would bet on no. But to the degree that you can earn a ranking in the preseason, I think they've earned being number 12. It's not an easy schedule for Washington.
No, it's absolutely not. It's also the Big Ten. That's what you're going to get. 3 of those 4 games are at home. That in that way, that increases the likelihood that they're going to be able to win one of those games. How many of those games do they have to win to have a successful season? Because I would argue they have to win one. They have to win one of those 4 games to have a season that you're going to be able to say was a good season. And in that respect, like, I'm not sure how much. I don't know how much you can talk about difficult scheduling now, because it's all about the conference that you're in. And being in the Big Ten includes challenges, but it includes benefits too. You're going to be able to get into the playoff as a 4th. I mean, it would be really hard for me to imagine 5 teams coming out of either conference, but a 4th place team's got a really good shot of being in the playoff. That's the benefit of being in the Big Ten. The cost of it is you're going to have a higher caliber of competition.
So that question, how many of those do they need to win, segues neatly into the fact that no other team that appears on Washington's schedule, outside of the 4 who are ranked in the top 14, received a single vote in the AP poll.
Ooh.
So your other Big Ten teams are Indiana at 20.
Mm-hmm.
USC received votes. Looks like they're about 30th. Nebraska received votes. Iowa received 5 votes. And that's it. So as much as Washington might want to complain, and maybe not Washington itself, but certainly some number of fans, about not getting a single vote, kind of in the same boat as half the Big Ten.
I'm looking at the poll now. Are we going to see that happen between the Big Ten and the SEC, where essentially a little less than half the conference is going to get ranked and the other half is going to be assumed to be bobbing upside down and not receiving votes? Like, is there a cutoff? We know that there's going to be a cutoff when it comes to playoff consideration. Is there going to be something similar that happens with regard to the voting, where the top 5, well, maybe it is the top 6 or 7 teams are going to get votes, and then the bottom 6 or 7, as opposed to it being a muddled middle, like where there's 3 teams that are at the top, and then there's a group of 9 teams, none of whom are considered top 10 teams, but all like a whole muddled middle. Are we going to see sort of an either or dichotomy?
With the Big Ten, yes. It's not quite the case with the SEC, because they have 10 teams ranked in the preseason top 25.
Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, South Carolina, Florida, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee.
And Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. I forget about Oklahoma because they're in the SEC. Some of those teams are not gonna be there at the end of the year. Like, some of those teams.
They can't be, right? And Missouri got 33 votes too. So
yeah. So you got 11 SEC teams that are 10 of them ranked and 11. Yeah.
11 of the top 32. Can't throw a rock without hitting an SEC team in these rankings. And it's probably appropriate.
What does that mean? It's appropriate.
I mean, they're good. Like, look, the Big Ten should take this opportunity to crow, right? They won the national championship last year. They won the national championship the year before. They're the biggest conference, God damn it. 18 teams. They went and destroyed the Pac-12. They, they adequately responded to the SEC's grab of Texas and Oklahoma, I guess. I honestly, like, if we're being really honest, getting Oregon into the league was the real win that way. Like, if you want to talk about adding programs that bulk up the strength of schedule in your league, like, that ain't been USC, UCLA, and Washington yet. It's been Oregon, right?
Christian, I am doing everything I can to sit here and just patiently acknowledge that there is an on-field justification for everything you're saying, but it's Oregon. They think college football was invented in 1994. Sure, it's a great on-field product. The biggest addition was USC, and right behind it is Washington.
Okay. Academically
Prowess. You're right. I did have my first sort of tinge of Big Ten pride, or where I got kind of annoyed at somebody. And you're not going to be all that shocked at who it is, but it was a question that was asked. This also might have been on a Netflix show. I'm not sure, but I saw it on Twitter, and certain follically challenged commentator was asked for his prediction on who will win the national championship.
Who's going to win the national championship, and is it going to be an SEC team?
It is. And by the way, if it's not, I'm leaving the country, because I am so sick and tired of being harassed by Big Ten fans on our show. The Big Ten has literally done nothing. They won 2 national championships. Michigan won one 2 years ago. They won 1.5 national championships, I think, before that in 70 years, and they act like they invented football. Alabama has won about 15 national championships in my lifetime. Now, I realize that's not a good comparison to a realistic lifespan, but I believe Texas is going to win. I didn't mean to avoid your question. It's going to end all this, and on January 20th, I'll be the happiest man in America, because I won't have to listen to the Big Tenors, or as my callers call them, the Little Tenors.
Got him.
That was a zinger, Paul. Paul.
Little Tenors.
It was it's the first time where I had a little bit of, I'm annoyed at the SEC on behalf of the Big Ten.
Yeah. I think the SEC recruits from the most fertile recruiting territory.
It helps that they cheat.
Well, what's cheating?
It helps they cheat.
What's cheating at this point? I mean, Texas Tech's not in the SEC, right?
It helps that they don't give a rat's ass about academics. See, those are the sort of things it's a very valid observation, Christian, that they do have the most fertile recruiting territories. And what does it bring out with me? Like some very deeply unflattering thoughts about their region of the country. That's what happens. I feel like you forced me to do that.
No, I think it was right there. I think it was bubbling just beneath the surface at all times. The SEC is good. I don't mean to take up Lane Kiffin's cause or anything here, but if you were to poll any college football coach, would you rather play a Big Ten schedule or an SEC schedule? Which do you think the majority are choosing?
The majority are choosing the Big Ten, and that's largely because of the speed of the defenses in the SEC. That's my feeling. And things have somewhat leveled out. I do think that the overall quality of the conference, some of that can get, because I don't want to say the SEC is not good or that it's overrated, because when you look at the number of NFL players that play there, but what I do think is that good football teams are good football teams, and that having quarterbacking still matters, that there are ways. It's not like it's the SEC and everybody else. I think that's the part of it that I resent. I agree with what you said, or what Lane Kiffin said. Which would you rather play every week? The SEC defenses, it's a hard gauntlet to run through. They also, and this has changed a little bit recently, but they have typically not had as good a quarterbacks. And I think it can be boring ass NFL light football, which I don't like.
Yeah, that's a hard argument to make to someone who just watched a season of Big Ten football last year. And I think it was a nationwide thing last year, frankly.
I would agree with you.
But returning to your prompt of take those top 4, Ohio State, Oregon, Illinois, and Michigan, and how many of those does Washington need to win to feel good about this season? It'd be hard to say it's not 2, right? Like
if they lose each of those 3 games, if they lose 3 of the 4, can it be a good season? You'd have to win all your other games.
If those are your only 3,
yeah,
you beat. Let's see. I mean, I think we all would agree Illinois is the most likely, which means if they do only win one of these 4, it probably won't be Illinois because that's what that's kind of like what everyone expects at this point.
This
Can
is
you go 9-3. Like, there's no world where this team goes 9-3 and you're feeling bad about it.
Right.
So, if you win all your other games, if you don't slip up at Wisconsin, if you don't slip up at Maryland, take care of Rutgers at home on a Friday night. If you don't have a weird Rose Bowl game, which has been prone to happen.
Totally prone to happen.
If you go to Pullman and take care of business and snap this road losing streak that they're on September 20th, then you could live with losing at Michigan and at home to the defending national champion and at home to Oregon. But look, now you're in a universe where you're going into Oregon 9-2.
Yeah.
Right. If we're saying these are their 3 losses, you're going into Oregon 9-2, meaning a win punches a ticket to the CFP.
Playoff. Yeah.
And 9-3 with the wins you have, unless Illinois is like awesome and you're the only team that beats them, is 9-3 with their schedule and the wins breaking down that way enough to be an at-large team in the CFP at 9-3 as the University of Washington? Probably not.
Yeah. It's a good point.
So you're talking about losing at home to Oregon to get bumped out of the playoff at that point, like that type of 9-3 season.
And that's going to stay.
Like on August 13th in a vacuum sitting here, it's easy to say, God, what business does this program have turning up its nose at 9-3? Are you kidding me? Anyway, they get to 9-3 is awesome. But there would, come November 29th or whatever it is, if that's the case, there are going to be some upset Husky fans.
If Washington wins 9 games, there's not going to be any scenario in which you, as a Husky fan, you feel anything other than the program is on the right track, right? Regardless of how it happens, you're going to look at it and you're going to say it's a true sophomore quarterback who's coming back for another year. This is an significant growth from what was a year ago. And you're in position to really, in a third year of Jed Fish, a second year as a starter with your quarterback, next year, the expectation becomes like you're going to make the playoff. Like that I think it would elevate. That would become sort of it. To be a good season, you're going to need to be in the college football playoff, which is I think fair and appropriate, all those things. What is strange about it is the way that you get to those. It will feel very differently depending on how you get there. And that the idea that it being 8-3 and beating Oregon would feel so monumentally better than being 9-2 and losing to Oregon is a strange sort of scenario to lay out, but that is how the schedule would look. And if I put down my rabid, non-thinking, irrational brain about Oregon and say, should the measurement of Washington's season be whether or not it beats Oregon in Jed Fish's second year with DeMon Williams' first full year as a starter, that's too high a bar to set. But that is very much how this season might wind up feeling. And if they win 2 of those 4 games, I would be hard pressed. If they win 2 of those 4 games, I would be hard pressed to say that the season was unsuccessful, even if they don't end up getting into the playoffs. You win 2 of those 4 games, you beat 2 of those 4 teams within your conference. And I think even if you slip up once or twice in other games, that you feel really good about where things are headed.
Yeah, like I don't even think it's a question among Husky fans if you were to present like, hey, you can either kick the Maryland game but beat Oregon, or handle Maryland and then lose to Oregon. Like, I know what every Husky fan on the planet is picking in that scenario. It's the same record.
Yeah. It's not a question. I I might kick 2 games to beat Oregon. If we're being honest, I might kick 2.
Yeah, I knew you might not be alone.
That's very funny. Did you see this week's story about John Mateer?
I was just going to say, what do you think John Mateer would set the over or under at among these 4 games?
I got to tell you, all of you people, set your Venmo to private.
Yeah, no kidding.
Nuke your social media history, delete it all, and set your Venmo to private. People don't need to be knowing. And it is very easy for them to see who you've been paying for what. If you leave a little funny note, it might not be so funny if rival fans track it down, which I would have to guess is how this came out. If people don't know, it's from 2022. Mm-hmm. So it's a few years ago. John Mateer made a couple of Venmo transactions, and the memo says sports gambling. And nobody else knows anything more than that. But obviously, this has caused quite a bit of consternation.
His best defense is that young people put anything but the actual reason for the payment
yes
in their Venmo transaction history. I did that. It was always some like reference to like drugs or burying a body or something like that. I think if it were that extreme, that's a lot easier to say like, it's an inside joke, right? Like that's not, obviously it wasn't, it wasn't paying my buddy like $16.33 for cocaine or whatever. This was just, we're screwing around. But to very specifically say sports gambling, parentheses, USC versus UCLA, like that one might be a little tougher to cover up. The fact is though, like, even if there's an investigation, and it should be noted that John Mateer like vehemently denied this, right? He posted a note on Twitter saying, "I've never bet on games. This was an inside joke. I don't gamble. I take this seriously." Even if there's an investigation, as long as they can't trace like a betting app to him.
Yes.
I don't see how this will be actionable. Could always be the case that like he paid someone else to make this bet, and that someone else for whatever reason like turns on him. You never know. I think it's more likely this ends with John Mateer doing FanDuel commercials.
Do they have rules? They must have rules that you can't endorse. Because I know you can't bet. It's very clear you can't bet on any NCAA games. But do they have rules about endorsements?
They do, although someone shared a photo of some sponsorship he did with like Northern Quest Casino or something like that. You probably can't like actively promote sports betting, but if the casino has some use for your name, image, or likeness that's unrelated to that, maybe it's fine. But I just like I gamed this out in the group chat and it went over well. So I'm gonna throw it out here on the podcast. Imagine like it's the first quarter of Oklahoma's season opener, and I, off the top of my head, don't know who they play. I apologize. But, John Mateer runs for a 36-yard touchdown. They kick the extra point. They're up 7-0. They cut to commercial. It's John Mateer. Says, "Hi, I'm John Mateer. I would never bet on sports." He looks at the camera and winks. "But if I did, I'd use the FanDuel," and he launches into his... That'd be hilarious. It
would be very, very funny.
All the speculation about like, he might lose his NIL deal over this. He might lose, but no, I think he's going to make more money. I think there's an opportunity for him to make more money here. And I don't know who his agent is, but I hope they're on the phone with a betting app pronto to try to hook him up.
You're aware of the Porter family, who do they have a Washington connection?
Yes. So Dad actually did work for the school. So,
and everybody knows the Porters.
Yes.
Michael Porter Jr. was on a podcast. I saw the clip this morning, so it must be relatively recently. Where I saw the clip was on Club 520, which Jeff Teague hosts with 2 guys, and it is the thing that will most consistently make me laugh when I'm alone by myself, listening to them react to things. Michael Porter is explaining how, and it's like this very heartfelt things he's struggled with over his life. And he talks about it being women and his relationships with women. And then he references his brother, like, my brother's problem. My brother had a gambling problem. and he never really had the same difficulties with women. And the guys on the show just start laughing. He's like, why are you saying this? I'm like, my brother has issues with gambling and he can't get any girls. And he never really had issues with money. You're talking about his brother. You're like, man, like you gotta didn't leave him out of this. He's already dealing with this whole thing.
Michael Porter's space in the NBA like cultural sphere is so funny to me. Because he's a good player.
He's a really good player.
Yet he's like most known for this just like wild podcast presence he has. He's simultaneously incredibly boring and uninteresting, while also just occasionally saying the most out-of-pocket stuff you could come up with.
It is very clear as someone who still does like the NBA, it is very clear that he was tied directly into all of that dysfunction in Denver. What happened as they were ending, and like it's very clear dudes did not like him. Like there was a high degree. We do not know all the dysfunction that was going on in Denver over the course of last season, but he was integrally involved in it. And you're right. Like there are very few people who can score like he can score, even in that league that is full of scorers, and it's pretty wild.
Is he the greatest player in Washington State high school basketball history?
So he played 1 year, 2 years.
1 year.
He's a lottery pick.
I think he averaged like 30 a game.
But then you would go, so they won the title. Because like Scott Pollard would be my natural rebuttal to that. But Kamiakin didn't end up winning the title. And Scott Pollard, while he had a really long NBA career, was never like Porter's a huge scorer. My answer is no, because he's a Washington State high school basketball player with an asterisk.
Because he's a mercenary.
Yeah. Jason Terry and Jamal Crawford are my answers for the two best. I think they're the two best players to come out of Washington high schools. Brandon Roy he probably had the highest ceiling, and he played at the highest level in the NBA out of guys that I would consider to be Washington State products, but he didn't have the career that Terry or Jamal had. There are compelling arguments to be made for both Jamal and Jason Terry. I end up going with Jamal, but I'm a little biased there because I know Jamal, and I think what he does with the basketball is incredible. I don't know if Michael Porter Jr. is a better NBA player than Jamal Crawford yet, though. So I would he's not. Even if I take off the asterisk, we're just looking at what he did in Washington State high school, like that senior season, and then what he did in the pros. No, he's not better than Jamal.
Fair enough. On the Mateer thing, if it was indeed a Texas fan who unearthed this Venmo history,
oh, for sure, it's absolutely. As soon as I saw it, there's just no doubt.
Further evidence that it just means more.
You know what? There is something to be said for that. Those people use FOIA requests to get at each other. Like those people have used tools of investigative journalism to take down Houston Nutt, to take down like all of those different things that have come from. There is a wild history of scandal that is tied into fans just hating on somebody else.
And I know they're newcomers. They're not SEC veterans. But like something like this, and again, assuming it was a Texas fan, which if it was, that's to be the most college football thing ever. It's just further proof that they belong in the SEC, this rivalry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would just throw out to Washington fans, where were you? Where were you? How important is your in-state rivalry? And you could say, oh, well, Oregon's the bigger rival, and they're in the same league now. Mateer wasn't even a starter until Washington and Wazoo were, the rivalry had kind of had some punch taken out of it because of the realignment stuff. So it's 2022,
No, man, Christian, that is snitching. Like, we need to be very clear. That is a loathsome activity. That is hall monitor crap.
Oh yeah, of course. But
we shouldn't be doing
football.
that. No. There's no exemption. You're not allowed to do it because it's college football. That reflects poorly on the character of the SEC. That reflects poorly. In no way does ratting actually you can make fun of them all you want, and you should make fun of them all you want. Cannot rat to the authorities. Like, you just can't, not even in college football.
That's a respectable take. I know the spirit of college football. I know the spirit of rivalries in the SEC. And I think it would be in keeping with that to scroll through your biggest rival's multi-million-dollar starting quarterback's Venmo history to see if you can find anything that might implicate him in a sports gambling scandal.
If Washington fans start doing that, I'm going to go at Washington fans. Like, that is scumbag behavior. It is absolutely should not be.
It's loser behavior. I'm just not surprised by it.
I'm not either, but it's not funny. It's not. I don't want anyone to come away from like, see what I did? Because I'm like, no, that is. It strikes me as in line with what is weakening America. It's right up there with when the Pac-10, Pac-12 would have 10 people on the first team all-league basketball teams. Like, that's the sort of stuff that makes us lesser as people.
That's a great comparison.
God.
It makes me it makes me think less of the person who scrolled through John Mateer's Venmo history than it does of John Mateer. I've got Wazoo friends who are submitting videos of passes that John Mateer threw in their loss to Wyoming last year. Just wondering. Well, was there maybe?
Oh, man.
That's not an accusation. I think the young man is probably clean. I want to watch him play. I hope he is not felled by this. And I hope that week 1 we're seeing him in a FanDuel spot after he scores a touchdown for the Oklahoma Sooners.
The entire sort of, there's a temptation when these things come up to say, like, this is part of the problem with the sort of legalization of sports gambling. And it's really not. Sports and gambling have existed side by side, and in fact at points been incredibly intertwined. And say, in the worst case scenario, that this Venmo description is exactly what it said. The idea that him betting on a game that he wasn't playing in at a point before he was even a factor, all of it is silly. I understand why the NCAA has to be protective, and players need to know they can't bet on it. Like, it should be a rule that is enforced, but as with everything, it gets carried to the point of absurdity where you go to, this isn't a big deal. I hope everybody just moves on from it because it's not a big deal.
You know who would never bet on college football?
Do we know this for sure? Ian constantly accuses us of taking liberties. I think last week it was that we slandered him by implying that he had answered his question, but he was refusing to admit it. And he pointed out that the question was, what are you looking forward to outside of Washington in the Big Ten? And we then said things we're looking forward to involving Washington in the Big Ten, which may or may not be true. I didn't care enough to go back and listen. Perhaps we should make no sports gambling allusions for fear of another angry text from Ian.
True. Shame on us. Shame on us. I promise for those just listening on audio, you might want to start watching on YouTube, because I'm going to drop Ian did us a favor and hit us with the horizontal video this time.
Yeah, he came in through with the horizontal. That man is learning.
So I'm gonna throw the old horizingus into the video timeline, and you guys can lay eyes on IP for the first time.
Good morning, guys. Christian, welcome back. I've never actually been to Alaska. It's one of, I think, like 4 states I haven't been to. And now the listeners can die with that vital information. I hope you stuck to halibut, which is just fine, and didn't go trolling down the Copper River for the worst food in the world. My question this week relates to the remaining questions with this team and with this roster. I mean, we know there are gaps. We know the middle of the defense is going to be a question mark. I don't know if it's necessarily a weak point, but a question mark, and particularly with Hatchett's injury, there may still be some questions on the offensive line. But what's the big question that hasn't been answered? And can it be answered before the season, or is it going to have to wait until August 31st when these things count for real? And maybe that game is on the 30th. I just saw the clock, and I think I better vamp to get this thing over a minute and a half, because I wouldn't want to go saving you or the listeners time. All right, we're clear. Yep, that's all I got. You guys have a good week. Go Dogs.
I was thinking that was still too short by Ian standards.
I love the meandering questions. I love that I occasionally get angry texts from people who listen complaining about it, which makes me joyful.
I know. It's just fuel to our fire.
That's right. I don't think there's anything that can be answered about this team until real games start, but that will not stop us from talking about it.
So can we mention the offensive and defensive line since Ian mentioned them?
Sure. Is there anything you can learn about them in the next 2 weeks?
No. Other than, like, is everybody going to be healthy?
Right.
Darren Hatchett had the scare. I wasn't there, but it sounded like, I mean, it really did not look good when he went down at Saturday's scrimmage, but was back fully suited up, fully participating at Tuesday's practice. So that they seem to have avoided anything major there. I mean, we already know they're going to be better on the O-line.
Yep.
Right. There's a big gap between, like, just better than last year and better enough to compete with Ohio State, which we can't know until they take the field with Ohio State. I think we know they're bigger on the defensive front. I think we know that they're maybe a little bit more capable on the interior. It's interesting to watch Sebastian Valdez kill it with the San Francisco 49ers and think,
yeah, brother,
this was one of their dudes last year on a D-line that everyone said was lacking, you know? So, like, did they have a single interior D lineman better than Sebastian Valdez on this team? I don't know.
That has actually made me think of something, though, that there are position groups. There's been a lot of study in the NFL among position groups where what they call weak link groups, in the secondary especially, that you want to avoid having one guy that is a liability, and you're better off playing a player at a position that he's less good at to avoid having a weak link. So say you have somebody who's a great free safety and a really good nickel, but your next nickel is a bad nickel. You're better off moving that free safety to nickel and bringing another good free safety in, even if that's not his best spot, to avoid a weak link. And watching how people have reacted to Valdez playing in San Francisco has actually made me think of, it can be really hard to identify a good defensive lineman if he's head and shoulders better than everyone else on his defensive line, or there are other weak links, because opponents can neutralize him. And I don't know, it was a thought that occurred to me that there are times we may not understand how good a player is because he's in a position group or at a spot where opponents can neutralize him because the team doesn't have the depth or the breadth of talent.
I'll take it a little more like glass half full and say, I don't think people quite have an appreciation for just how good their corners could be this year. Like, I don't think we'll know until they go up against a really strong passing attack, which, when that will be, I don't know. Well, I mean, Colorado State brings back its starting quarterback, Braden Fowler-Nicolosi. Ohio State's got a 5-star kid who hasn't really played. Like, Takario Davis is having an amazing camp. And he was there in the spring. It's not like this is our first look at him, but he's made some plays where it's like, yeah, that's what That's what 6'4" gets you. Like, that's what a senior who is that long and that athletic can do for you at that position. He had an interception on Tuesday of a deep ball that Damon Williams threw toward Desmond Roebuck. And I mean, it wasn't the greatest throw. Like, if he'd had it further out in front of him, like, I don't know if he completes it, but it wouldn't have been picked off. And it just showed, like, the ground that someone with those measurables can make up. And he's running with him. The ball's a little bit underthrown, and he just undercut it, stuck his hands up, pick. So I think Ephesians Prysock looks better. You know, you're not seeing him like get beat a whole lot. You know, we'll see once the game starts. I think that's one thing where it's like, yeah, we know they've kind of, okay, right? They've got the 2 seniors, 2 Arizona guys, 2 6'4" guys. Like, it's been a storyline. It's been a thing. I think there's some potential for those guys to be like really good this year. And maybe we don't quite know until we see that. I mean, I would kind of bullish on the whole secondary. Like, Nichols a little bit, maybe undecided. Leroy Bryant's making a move there, but they've got 3 safeties, 3 veteran safeties who are going to be involved, plus a true freshman, Rylan Dillard Allen, plus Vince Holmes. So, I mean, you got like 5 guys at safety that they trust enough to play, and 2 corners that, you know, if this were the Pac-12, certainly you'd be saying they'd be a contender for top corner group in the league. I don't know if it's true about the Big Ten, and they got to go prove it. But I think Washington's secondary is maybe a little bit of we won't know quite how good they can be until the games start, but it's my suspicion that they're going to be pretty good.
I'm going to go on the other side of the ball, and this is going to be a question mark about what we believe will be a strength. I love and I'm excited about Damon Williams. A lingering question I have that we're not going to know until the games start is if his tendency to hold, is he going to take too many sacks? And last year, and I think this is the right observation, it is impossible to sort of evaluate quarterback play in large part because of how quick the pass rush could get home, the lack of protection. Additionally, with Damon Williams, scrambling is going to be part of his game. The sacks he took, I tend to chalk up to like he's a true freshman playing behind a spotty line. He's going to take some sacks in that situation. He's got to be able to not take as many sacks. Like that needs to come down because presumably the protection is going to be better. I believe the protection will be better. That the sacks, those are drive killers. They need to come down.
Yep, I think that's a good one. And really just Damon Williams' whole game, right? Like the offseason goes on long enough, and a certain segment of the fan base, I think at a certain point, some months ago, some last season even maybe, just accept that like, oh, this guy's a superstar. Okay, you've got your superstar quarterback, and away you go. He's going to be awesome. Nobody knows it yet, but like he's just slept on. The world will see soon enough. And I think that's a fair viewpoint to have. Clearly, Jed Fish believes it. Clearly, Washington's coaching staff believes it. But until he's that guy, he's not that guy, right? So we don't.
If there's something that could prevent that from happening, that is the most likely flaw. And I'm not saying he has it or it will, but that potential bugaboo.
You could go glass half full on that too, and say, even the people who think he's going to be good don't know yet, like exactly what this guy is.
Yeah.
You know, that after 6 games, you might be going, oh, wow, like he's a star. He's unlike any player I've seen put on the Washington uniform with how elite he is throwing the ball and how fast he is, right? There's never been a player like this before. And I do think there's a combination of traits there that I've written this could be truly unique in Washington history among quarterbacks. So that potential exists too. So maybe that's the answer, right? Like the fact that we can talk about how it's possible we're underrating Damon Williams, while it's also possible he could come up, like a lot of sophomore quarterbacks do, well short of the very highest expectations for him from the very most optimistic fans. Maybe that means he's the answer, right?
Yeah. When do you think we'll find out? Oh, when the games start. When the games start.
It is indeed August 30th, Ian. 17 days from when we're recording this. God, I got so much to do in the next 17 days. Holy cow.
Well, should we let you get to it?
Probably. Thanks to everybody listening everywhere. Special thanks to those watching on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I'll link it on the show page. Leave us a review. Rate the podcast while you're at it. Everything you do helps people find the show. More people are listening than ever. I think that's true. By us launching on YouTube. Love the numbers from the first couple episodes. Hope you'll watch this one. Hope you'll keep listening. Hope you'll keep reading on montlake.com and the dang apostrophe. I think we'll talk to you next week.
Peace.